The next question, and this next one, I have to say, in my time in law enforcement, I don't know how many phone calls I got from family and friends after a crisis has hit a law enforcement agency. And, say, for example, there's an officer-involved shooting, and it's a very controversial shooting. Maybe a child has been shot mistakenly by a police officer. And the community is outraged. They want answers. They actually want more than that, but they want answers. Or you have at a hospital situation where a patient has been given medication inappropriately, and it has caused very, very dire circumstances for that patient. Maybe even the patient dies. I think our communities want to hear something. They want to hear something from the leaders of those institutions. So I would get phone calls with, "Hey, Chuck, what's going on with that?" As if I would have any more information than they did. But as a leader, keeping in mind, and Chief, you touched on this briefly, that involved employee, whether it is a nurse, or whether it's a police officer, or whether it's a teacher, that person has rights. They have a right to have a fair investigation done, amongst other things. So how does the leader come out and be the face for that department, that organization, and speak to the public while at the same time balancing the legal privacy requirements of that involved employee? It's a real tough one. Chief, would you start, please?
Sure. I think we have a tendency when something happens and somebody asks us a question to respond assuming they know what we know, assuming that they've been in the business as long as we have. And I think we have to realize that in this region, depending on what you say, it may be on CNN, it may be a national, international news story, and realizing that you have to take the time and get down to basics and explain slowly the process and put everything in context. So if you've got an issue of somebody getting the wrong medication, to talk about how big a hospital it is, how many patients come in at a time, how complex the job is, and that we have what we're focusing on is a mistake made, human error, and that we're going to deal with that. If it's a police issue and a kid was shot, for instance, to be able to put in context how many runs officers go on, how many radio calls they go on, how many times they get there, how many armed encounters there are, what the expectations are of the officer when they get there, what the expectations of the community are, but to paint a picture for people so that they have an appreciation for what the officer rolled up on when they got out there. If there was a replica gun, show the gun. We had a case in Long Beach about a year ago, where a tragic case where an individual who had a .41 blood alcohol level was holding a hose nozzle that looked very much like a pistol, and he pointed it at officers who responded, and he was fatally shot. And you look at that, and the big story then spun by the attorney for the victim, the victim's family, was that it was a hose nozzle, and they led you to believe that there was a hose attached and all that. But when you put it in context and show people a visual on what it was, it became a lot more reasonable then to be able to see how the officers got involved in what they did. And so I think that don't assume anything, paint the picture. I'd say a big thing is to identify the issue and you set the parameters. Don't let the media set the parameters and go off with their hair on fire. You set it, put it in context, and then be able to work with it from that point on. And I think by doing that, the questions that you get in response, you've tailored the field to where they can take those.
Great. Colleen?
Yes. I always took the tactic, and I think from learning from others that I thought did a great job at handling these kinds of situations, is get out front as quickly as possible. If you need to contact the media because you want to get your statement out there before they put one out that maybe one of your rogue staff has already sent to them via an anonymous phone call, it's best to get your statement out there first. But again, it's also the preparation of that statement. Because I think, we're all kind of connected, our mind and our heart. We're emotionally still at that moment, where whatever that event might be. And we had a We had a successful suicide in one of our institutions, and that was a very emotional situation to deal with, to see a juvenile in that situation, go through that, and to see your staff have to go through that. We wanted to get out front because it's not just what the media is going to do with the statement, but it's the collateral people that have a vested interest in hearing from you. And the one group that was most critical that I learned in my position that wants to hear first before they read it in the paper is the employees. They want to hear from you first. So to the extent that you can do that, and it depends how you get that done on how large your organization is. Do you have satellite offices? Do you have people that work at home? Do you have global offices? Do you have offices across the United States, up and down California, or are you all under one building? Whatever that looks like, have a plan on how you release information as quickly as possible during a critical event, because your staff will forever remember that as you taking care of them and of one of their own, because they will worry that the criticism will then dump over on them as well. When one of our employees has a problem, then the picture comes out that maybe everybody's doing that bad thing too. And so staff become defensive, and they want to see their leader come out there and put some sense into what is going on. So it goes back to what Chief said, is that also is to make sure that you can paint the realistic picture. The other thing that we saw as a collateral issue were the parents, the family members that were involved with our kids in our institutions. So we made sure we got information via letters ASAP in the mail, and had people posted at telephones, designated telephones, with information that was consistently given to people that started to call in wanting to know if their child was okay. Was my child maybe going to be able to commit suicide while he's under your care? What are we going to do about that? So we made sure that we got information out so that the people were not only hearing the events from the media, because the media has very limited information at that point.
Dr. McChesney.
Just a couple things to add to what these folks have already said. One point that I'd like to make is that when you're speaking publicly about an incident where someone has been injured, harmed, or appears to have been injured or harmed, the speaker from your agency has to be able to convey a sincere, empathetic tone. You have to recognize, first and foremost, that something unfortunate has happened, and that there is some feeling that you are not just an institution there, that on paper, that you are real people and that you understand. There are times, and you know, you have to look to your legal guidance with regard to this, but there are times that organizations have to say that they're sorry. And my experience with the Catholic Church it sort of leads to that. There are bishops who are the leaders of the church who needed to say they were sorry publicly, and it took many of them a long time to come to that realization and to convey the empathy that most of them really do have, but weren't conveying that. The other thing I think that's important that goes kind of behind this is that the leader has to have the ability to say to the public, we are going to do a prompt fact-finding, and to have a mechanism in place that does that protects the rights of the employees, whether they're clergy, whether they're officers, whether they're nurses, but that you have a mechanism in place that people believe in, that has integrity within that fact-finding system, so that you don't find yourselves in a position where some other agency or some government agency is telling you what to do and coming in trying to find out your facts for you. You want to be able to say, we can find out our own facts and prove it time after time by doing proper internal investigations.
Please.
Yeah, just to go back on one thing that we touched on before is the preparation piece. I think a good idea is to put your leadership team together and brainstorm issues before you have the issues, and come up with a template, come up with a checklist. The military's great at this. The organization, the LAPD I came from, was great at it. They took it from the military. But there was notebook dividers, so you had them in the field with you with a checklist of issues to think about. And that was so helpful in a time of crisis. You know all that stuff, but you're thinking of 100 different things at once. Some things come to mind. You know, an officer is killed. You get out at the scene, and you're trying to catch the suspect. You've got a bunch of things going on there. You're dealing with bringing the family in, making the notifications, dealing with the media, dealing with the employees that were there and the friends throughout the department, the relationship issues that exist. So you got 100 things on your plate. Grab somebody and have them with you to look out for you. And that's something I've learned the hard way, only because you're trying to do all of these things and you're driving yourself. And I've found myself that I've got all this stuff in my head, and I'm 3 exits past where I was supposed to get off. And the little things that you take for granted on autopilot, you know, that's not happening when you've got all these other things going and you're trying to talk on the phone and text and email and do all this kind of stuff. Grab somebody with you, have notebook dividers or a checklist of things you want to do. And if you don't have something to address the issue at hand, take a couple of minutes, grab a couple of people that you feel good about and say, give me some thoughts. What do we need to hit? What are the things that we've left open? And after we leave here, if you think of something that I missed, give me a call, or let's circle the wagons back and be able to hit all the things we need to hit. That, for me, has been very helpful. The other piece that we touched on briefly was the notification to employees, that particularly with an employee arrested, an employee injured badly, with email now or texting, we have the ability to be able to get something out. Even if you only get it out 5 minutes before the media gets the press release, do an internal distribution on that so that when they check and see, when did they send this to me, it was before the media got it. It was before the city council got it and before the mayor. You're not putting the mayor in a bad spot or the council by giving a 3-minute head start to the folks inside. But like Colleen said, you basically help put things back internally, that we are a team and we are working together, and they did think about me and my thoughts and all of that kind of thing. So just a couple of things to add on there that came to mind.
Yeah, and the other thing that accomplishes, because it is easy to forget about the rank and file out there still doing the job, is that they will start getting phone calls.
Yeah.
They will. They'll start getting phone calls. And if you've got a 2 or 3 sentence email out to them that this happened, we are currently investigating. Should you get questions, please direct them to this person. But in the meantime, this is what is going on. And so that way you have a consistent message. And then, again, the troops feel really good that you included them. And the other thing that I think was very key that was said is it has to do with what you're able to say as the leader. And I do think whenever you can, outside of any extraordinary circumstance where you cannot be the face talking about this serious event in front of the cameras, but if you can, you should be the one if you're in the leadership role, because people want to see you. They want to know that you're there and to deal with the human side of what happened. But what I ran into, which was very interesting, is the hesitancy for that from legal staff. Legal staff are looking at down the road. They're looking at litigation down the road. So they're worried about what might be said that will come up later as a twisted admission of guilt and wrongdoing on behalf of the organization, which then implicates the government that you work for. So these are things, again, that if you have a plan in place, if you think about and reflect on these, you're not caught off guard, so that you can handle them effectively and carefully as a leader that you want to be would do.
Well, what happens if you've had this incident, this officer-involved shooting or patient given wrong medication or something like that, and it seems like today when we have those type of situations, groups form. The anti-police group comes out of the closet. The anti-nursing group, or the anti-teaching, or the anti-government, or the occupy this or the occupy that. there's an ad hoc committee or an ad hoc group that forms. Do you meet with that group? And if so, do you include the media when you meet with them? That group has started to somewhat formalize or kind of solidify. Doctor, would you want to comment on that? Would you meet with those people who seem to be bent on being against everything that you stand for?
Well, I think the answer to that is sometimes you will and sometimes you won't. I mean, you've really got to look at all the factors that go beyond that group. It may be that some members of that group you already have a relationship with because they've been involved in, other issues. And the more community, outreach that you've done, the better off. You probably are, at least at a good communications level with those groups. I'll give you an example going back to the Catholic Church's issue. There was is a very strong organization called SNAP, which is Survivors of Abuse by Priests. And a lot of church leaders were really reluctant to meet with victims groups because they're vocal, because they're critical of everything that the bishops do and so forth. I always dealt with them. It wasn't always a pleasant experience. In fact, sometimes it was wrenching, but it also was very, confrontational. But the reason I did is I wanted to sort of get inside their heads and see where they were coming from, because you can't put on that arrogant view that only you know the proper way to deal with something. They may have a good idea. They're going to present you with information that you may not have and that will be critical for you to know. So where it makes sense to do that, where it's not going to make things worse, I recommend that there is a relationship developed and lines of communication. You can also prevent, by establishing that, you can prevent some bad things from happening down the road.
Thank you. Chief?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think Colleen touched on the most important thing is be there. Get out there and be there. To have a presence there is a critical part. I think in meeting with a group that's confrontational, bring the media, go meet with the group. Under most circumstances, I would at least attempt to do that, because by doing that, you go out there, you be reasonable, you tell them what you can, and all the better for the media to be able to be there, because now you've just taken the wind out of their sails. If they make it personal, if they're not reasonable, if they're attacking you, all of that then is reported by the media as well, or at least they have the opportunity to report it. I think the key for whoever's out front on it is, don't you become the story. Don't let them bait you into saying things that you shouldn't say, into snapping back at them, into expressing your frustration, your anger, your fatigue. You may have been up all night on an officer-involved shooting, and you're dealing with this at 10 o'clock in the morning, and you're tired, and you're frustrated with what's going on, and again, you're dealing with 100 different things. It takes a lot to be able to take that step back and just say, you know what, stay on the issues, stay on point, know what you're going to say before you go out there and say it, and then don't get distracted and taken off that. And whatever you do, don't let someone in the crowd start an argument, and then you go back and forth with them. Say thank you for your input, and then walk away and say that's the end of this. I'll get back to you when I have more information to share. That way, it's not abrupt. It's professional. You've shared what you can, but you're not going to engage in an argument.
Thank you. I have to tell you, in May of 2000, I wish I would have had your words of advice. Okay. Chief, you remember May of 2000, the Huntington Beach Police Department had a very controversial officer-involved shooting, and I was our press information officer at the time. And our good friends John and Ken came to town, okay, from KFI. I thought I was going to solve everything. Boy, did I make a huge mistake. I just made things worse, I think, by going on that show and trying to get the word out and get the truth out. I think I failed miserably at that. I wish I would have had your words of advice back then. Colleen, anything else?
No, I agree with both of my colleagues here. I think it depends. Most of the time, I would say you want to try to meet with the interested parties as much as possible. But you don't have to have an hour-long conversation with them. Generally, they want to meet with you right after an incident has occurred. People are kind of in the flurry of it all. There's heightened emotions and different things. There's grandstanders. There's all kinds of people that are there for a variety of reasons. And so really I think the role of the leader is to set that calming effect. Yes, we've had an incident. We're looking into it. If there's loss of life, then you express that terrible, the empathetic. It's awful. It's a tragedy. We will get to the bottom of what happened, but that is all that we know for now. We will get back with you as new information is available that we can share. Remember that they will be taping you, they will be replaying it over and over and over again. So carefully choose those words so that you're not overcommitting yourself inadvertently in the height of the emotion.
I think a big part is, as was mentioned, that there's a process. For everything we do, there's a process, and the process will take some time. We'll be as transparent as legally we can. But that piece is an education piece because most of the community, they're all experts on policing because they all watch TV. And truly, that is their education, and it's done in an hour. And somebody gets in a shooting or somebody gets in a traumatic incident, and then, after the commercial, they're back in the black and white doing the job again. And so when you say somebody's going to be out of the field for a period of time until the conclusion of the investigation, or whatever it is that we normally do, that's not something they normally expect because that's not what they've been conditioned to expect by TV. So I think when we say going back to basics and explaining the process, a lot of it is trying to undo what has been done by years of watching TV and movies.
Chuck, just one more too. I think we've all experienced also, though, with cell phones and the capability of videotaping with a cell phone. You may be responding to a videotape that's out there that's gone viral on the people's networks, and so you're responding to footage that people are looking at. It does make it very difficult, but I still think the truth of the matter in a leader's role at that point is to simply say, we will look into the matter. We have minimal information at this point, but please be confident we will look into this matter. And then keep coming back with that assurance you'll look into it. That's kind of the containment stage, if you will.
Great. Thank you.